Hello, thank you all for joining us. It is just about a minute before we'll get started with our session for today. So we'll let people join today, give another moment. I'm actually right now going to throw up a poll. I'd love to hear while we're getting started and getting ready for people to join, what best describes where you are with NoRedInk today. So you'll see a poll pop up, and I just kind of want to hear from you guys as teachers. You've got a lot going on. NoRedInk is probably one of the things you're doing with your students. So please just share with us, where are you with NoRedInk today? Give us a little bit of insight into the things that you are working on. Maybe you haven't created your classes yet. You're brand new. Maybe you created your classes last week. You're ready to start creating assignments, or you've created a few, but you're not fully creating assignments like you want to be. Or maybe you've already started looking at the results of your assignments and you're feeling really confident in what you're doing with NoRedInk. So we'll just take a moment and let some people chime in here. Looks like a pretty even split, which is really interesting. This is wonderful. Thanks. Awesome. So we'll give about 30 more seconds for people to reach out and make your voice heard in this poll. For those of you who haven't created your classes yet on NoRedInk, fret not. We're going to cover a lot today, assuming that you have created classes, but we did have a webinar last week. And so in our follow-up email, you can still view that session. We have a ton of resources to get you started. And so we will share those out in the follow-up email. So feel free to kind of follow along, pick up on the things, ask questions, and we will follow up with the additional resources if you haven't created your classes yet. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and we will get started with our session today because we have a lot to cover in a pretty short amount of time. So first, who am I? I should probably introduce myself. My name is Kelly Burnett. I am from the NoRedInk customer support team. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I was a teacher prior to coming into this role. And today joining me is my teammate and coworker, Christina, and she is going to be answering your questions as you submit them on the GoToWebinar panel. This is the rest of our support team as well. So if you ever reach out to us, you're going to get one of these wonderful humans. We promise we're not robots. So for today, quick housekeeping. In the GoToWebinar panel, as I mentioned, Christina is going to be answering some questions. As you go through the session, feel free to type in a question in the questions panel. We will try to get to as many questions as possible throughout the session, as well as at the end of the session. So just keep an eye out for that. And we do have a ton of resources if we don't get to your question that we will share. In addition to that, keep an eye out for polls like I just shared. We'll probably do another one here just to hear from you. And I did want to share that if you feel like you'd like to log into your own NoRedInk teacher account and try to follow along today, feel free to take this moment to do that. We will be working in a NoRedInk actual teacher account on NoRedInk, showing you how to create assignments, how to look at results. So feel free to jump in and explore as we go through this session today. And we will send the session out in a recording following our time today, so you can always refer back to it. Awesome. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, first we're going to explore our curriculum library. There is a lot of content to explore. And the next thing we're going to talk about is then learning how to use that content to create a unit for our students with different assignments and different ways to support them. Specifically using those assignment results to track their progress and supporting struggling students. And today we're really going to focus on how do we do that from afar, knowing that we're not in the same classroom as many of our students in today's education environment. So with that being said, we're going to jump into the curriculum library, but I actually have another poll. This is something I would love to hear from you as you're logging in, as you're getting set up. How do you, as the teacher, prefer to make your assignments right now? And this could be for right now. So We'll see that pop up in just a moment. Maybe at this moment, you really just want pre-made activities you can click on and assign to your students and make sure they're getting working. Maybe you just want some guidance on what you can assign. So maybe a little bit of a map. Or if you're a true adventurer, you like to explore, you like to create your own units. And this doesn't have to be all the time. This could be right now, today, or overall. We know that we do like to be able to see what we create and have some autonomy over that. So we'll take a moment and hear from, awesome. We've got some adventurers out there, but it sounds like a lot of us just really pre-made activities is kind of the name of the game right now. This is wonderful. Okay. A lot of people have already written in, so thank you for sharing. We don't want to waste too much time here, so we're going to go ahead and jump right into our curriculum library. But this is great to know. So what I'm going to do today is show you in our teacher dashboard. I'm going to jump in there right now as we go through our curriculum library. I know a lot of you are going to want pre-made activities. That is something that we know would be helpful right now. So as we go through today, I'm going to show you how to explore the curriculum library to create your own assignments. But I will also show you where to find some pre-made assignments. And in the email that follows that, we're going to have a link to all of these amazing pre-made assignments and lesson plans from our curriculum team. So I just wanted to share that out, that we have been creating assignments for you to use with your students that don't take as much setup on your end, and we will share that. But for today, let's go ahead and explore our curriculum library. So first, let's start in the teacher dashboard. So as you can see, I am logged in as myself, if you'd like to follow along. The other thing I want to share before I ever start anything in my teacher dashboard is if you have not clicked this help and info, when you see your name, you'll always see help and info next to it. We are always right next to you to help. So clicking on this will take you to our help center. If you're ever stuck on NoRedInk, feel free to click here, search, reach out to us on support. But from our teacher dashboard today, we're going to not go into help. We're going to go over here to the other side of our dashboard and click curriculum. So you'll see assignments, student data, and today we're going to click into curriculum. Here we're going to be able to start exploring all of the content that NoRedInk has to offer, and there is a lot to explore here. So I'm going to take a moment and just remind you, today we're focusing on assignments for skill practice and assessment. Next week, we'll focus on writing assignments specifically. So keeping that in mind, in the curriculum library, you're going to see a few tabs right here at the top: featured, writing, grammar, and standards. Now we're going to today really focus on grammar and standards tabs. And so I'm going to click in the standards tab first, because we want to know what is the content that NoRedInk has for our students. By clicking on the standards tab, you're going to see a few different ways to explore the curriculum of NoRedInk. One way to narrow down the content relevant to you is to use the grade level bands that you see here. Now, you'll notice that these are divided into bands. So you can click and see which we recommend for your students. These are always available in the curriculum library. And to explore further, you can click and open up a topic and view the pathways and topics here. Now, in addition to this, for the rest of the school year this year, because we know that a lot of teachers have been faced with really having to make do, we also have your state and high stakes testing filters on the side here. So when you see browse by alignment, in addition to grade level, you can actually sort by those topics that are going to be heavily tested or lightly tested on the SAT, the ACT, if you use the MAP test or the AP test, depending on your grade levels. And then your state will also show. For here, I'm basing this account out of Virginia. So here we see the standards of learning for Virginia, and we can explore some of these standards and how they are assessed. So this is something that is available for our all of our users right now, because we know that you guys are really trying to make sure your assignments are aligned to your goals. Now, the last thing I want to call out, this is actually one of the ways that I use this most often, is the search bar up here. So if you are looking through the standards filters, you're looking for something specific. For example, today, I know I want my students to work on adjectives. So I'm actually going to go ahead and just start typing. You'll see it's starting to search for me. And here I can see all of these assignments. Now, there are a few things I want to talk about before we move on from the curriculum library. While you're looking at assignments, you can always preview the topic. So if you'd like to see what these questions look like for your students, click preview and you can actually try it out yourself. You can view the lesson that your students will see when they click into this. And if you see this, we have some interactive tutorials, and this is a way to experience how your students will see it. You can actually go through these prompts, which your students will see when they're introduced to this topic. So that's one other thing that I want you to make sure you know about the curriculum library. That way you know what you're assigning to your students. And the last thing I do want to note, we know that some of these still have this little lock next to it. So we have hundreds of topics available for all users. If you're interested in really getting access to all of them, just let us know after the session, and we were happy to put you in touch with getting full access to all of these topics as well. All right, we're going to stick with adjectives, but we're going to go ahead and jump back here. Curriculum library, this is a quick tour because we really want to get into creating those assignments. So let's just recap. We used filters to find the relevant content. We searched with keywords to explore the topics, and we previewed those tutorials, but also the lessons and topics themselves. Now, a quick tour of the curriculum library is great, but what we want to do today is really talk about how to use this content in creating your assignments for skill practice and assessment. So how do we do that? Well, what we've decided is today to focus on the assignments that will come together to create a unit of study for your students. We're going to start with a unit diagnostics. So we're going to jump back into the curriculum library and click that grammar tab. So here we are in our curriculum library. Again, we clicked curriculum here. We're going to click this grammar tab, which I mentioned earlier, so next to standards. And we're going to just take a moment as we kind of look through here. If you scroll down, you'll see all of these different activities. Now, the first one you'll see is our planning diagnostic, and this diagnostic is a way to get a good overview of the topics your students will need to work on. Today, we're going to go ahead and skip over that because we know we just want to start them working right onto a unit. So we're going to focus on the unit diagnostic here. But you'll notice that every assignment type on NoRedInk does have a small summary in a sentence of how to use that assignment. So I highly recommend, feel free to explore these on your own time. Now, the unit diagnostic here, we're going to click assign. And this is a pretest. We call it a unit diagnostic, but it is a quiz that's just going to work as a pretest for your students. And one of the great things about NoRedInk is our unit diagnostics, our practice, and our growth quizzes will all work together to actually show you growth for the student over a course of time. Now, I did say I was going to have my students work on adjectives. So we're going to go ahead and open this up. You can search topics here. So if you know what you want your students to work on, or if you know, here it is, adjectives, click and open. And I'm going to include all of these topics. So what does the adjective describe? I can preview this and view the lesson. I want to make sure that's what I'm asking them. And I'm actually going to include 4 topics here. Now, when you're creating a unit diagnostic, there's a couple things I don't want you to forget. Down here, you'll see how many topics you've included on this unit diagnostic. I'm going to include 4 here. And you can choose how many questions you want to include here. So if I have 4 topics and 20 questions, it's going to be about 5 questions per topic, for example. For my students, I'm going to go ahead and stick with 20, but you can adjust this and then click continue. Now we've set up our assignment. We want to go ahead and choose which students we want to assign this to. So for this unit diagnostic, I'm actually going to assign it to my English 9 class. And the reason why is my English 10 class, we're going to take a look at what this looks like once they complete some. But when you're creating an assignment, you'll see the same page. This is the assignment creation page. You'll choose which students to assign to. If you click here, you'll select all students in the class. You can also choose individual students. And then in addition to that, you can set the start date, the due date, and the time you'd like it due, and then create an assignment name. So for here, I'm going to call this pretest adjectives. There we go. Now, two other things to note. Allowing late submissions means that your students will be able to complete this assignment even after that due date has passed, but you will see a notification if they complete it late. So this is just a good way if you're not, if you want to make sure they take it, but you will be alerted if they complete it late. And then also scramble questions. So if you'd like the questions to be different for each student, in a different order for each student, you can do that. I'm going to go ahead and keep that off. It doesn't really make a difference now that my students are all separate, but that is something you might want to think about when you have students back in your classroom. And clicking assign, we'll then see this assignment created. There you go. Now, today we're going to talk about creating a unit all together. And we're going to talk about how to use these results together. So I've created a unit diagnostic. The next thing I want to do is actually look at what these results are going to look like. For those of you following along, you won't have results yet. So I'm going to click into English 10, kick back, relax, just kind of follow along. In my unit diagnostic for my English 10 class, anytime your students have completed the assignment, you can click into this results tab here. So unit diagnostics are unique in that they actually tell you how the student did in bands of proficiency. Now you'll notice that this is actually displaying how my students did overall on the topics. And I had 4, this is the same assignment, so 4 topics. I can actually click this display. So let's see, let's start at the top because this is a little bit zoomed in. We see my assignment. If I scroll down, I can actually filter by different topics. So I'm going to look at forming comparative adjectives. And you'll notice that my names down here changed. So Peggy and Bruce are proficient. Tony and Natasha are struggling in forming comparative adjectives. Now, we're going to stop right there for just a moment. We're going to jump back here into our creating a unit. These are the 3 steps. I should have shown these probably a moment earlier, but let's go through them. So the first one, we wanted to create a pretest with a unit diagnostic. Well, we did that. So now that we've created that pretest, we want to use that to create targeted practice assignments for these students based on what they're doing or how they did on their unit test. So as you guys are following along, your students will start to fill in here. Couple things I did want to note. As you're looking through here, if I want to see the areas that Natasha needs a little additional support, you can click on the name of the student. It's going to show you how they did on the assignment and on each of the different topics assessed. Now, Tony and Natasha both are struggling in forming comparative adjectives. And it looks like they're both struggling in forming superlative adjectives. Meanwhile, Bruce and Peggy seem to be doing pretty well with that. So the next step here for targeted practice assignments, I'm going to click Continue Unit. If you're following along, you'll notice that by clicking Continue Unit, you're going to have 2 options, either practice or creating a growth quiz. Now, right now, we're going to do a practice, but we'll talk about a growth quiz in just a moment. This practice is a way for students to develop and demonstrate mastery on the topics that they are practicing. Now, one thing I want to note is that when you're creating this, we mentioned making this targeted. When you click open to view your students, you'll see their proficiency on that unit diagnostic. So it's right here for you. I know that I want some extra practice for my 2 students down here, Natasha and Tony. So I'm going to deselect everybody else. This is targeted practice for them. And I'm going to actually make sure I'm just focusing on the 2 areas that they really need additional support in. So by clicking this X, I can remove topics from my practice assignment. You can add a start date, due date, and the same thing here with as the unit diagnostic. So I'm going to click Assign here, and it's going to create a new practice assignment for those students specifically. This is how you can create targeted work for your students, and you can see that they are able to, you are able to kind of differentiate for students based on their needs. Now, we did have a question come in that I'd like to address now. How do I delete an assignment or make changes to an existing assignment? That's a great question. So for example, if you created a targeted practice, but you want to make a change to that, the best way to do that is actually to click this option right here, this box. So because our assignments are created in the moment and are differentiated for each student, we actually make a copy of the assignment if you'd like to change which topics you include. So for example, I know I'd like to include, this is too much for my students, I want to include something new here, or if I want to edit which assignment topics are on here, I can go through and make those adjustments to a copy of the assignment. So to edit an assignment, we want to click make a copy here by clicking these three little buttons and make those changes and create a new assignment. If you do need to make an edit to an assignment and you do this, you can also remove an assignment. We don't delete them because we know sometimes deletions happen by accident, or you'll want to reuse the assignment at a later date. So you can also click this to archive and hide the assignment from your gradebook. So that is a quick tip if you need to make a copy and make some adjustments, or archive or hide it from your gradebook instead of deleting the assignment altogether. And the next question we have here is, how do you preview assignments? So we did show you that in the curriculum library, how to preview different topics. If you'd like to preview the actual assignment that you've created, by clicking the same eye icon, it always means preview on NoRedInk, so you can click that and you'll see exactly as your students experience it. And you can even click into the lessons and the practice yourself. So this is a great way to model for students. We know that you're not in a classroom to model, but if you're doing a Zoom or some sort of online class meeting, you can do this to show them what they'll expect in your assignment. Oh, here we go. Go back to my assignments. So that preview option is always there for you to preview the actual assignment. Now, the next question that we see is what to do when a student is stuck. Now, with a practice assignment, students are going to be asked to continue to answer questions until they demonstrate mastery, and they'll get to see hints, and the questions will adapt as they go. Here, you'll see a student is stuck, so you'll see this alert, and you can click on this to learn a little bit more about it. You can also click the results tab, and in a practice assignment, so Natasha and Tony here, you'll see this big note if a student is stuck. What it means for a student to be stuck is that they've answered a number of questions in a row incorrectly. The student is not prevented from moving on. He can continue to answer questions and make attempts to get a question correct. And as soon as Tony gets one question right, he's going to be unstuck and be able to move on. The other thing to note about being stuck, the students will see the same lessons and tutorials, but if you have a student who is stuck that you know might need a little additional support, we do have some tips in our Help Center that we can share out. And we do recommend reaching out to the student. If you have Google Classroom, send an email to see if there's anything that you can help them with. So we've heard that some teachers have had short phone conferences or even Zoom conferences to just support individual students who are needing a little bit extra help. And the last thing I want to note about this practice is when you look at practice results, you'll see that this is leveled from beginning to mastered. So again, we're looking for mastery here. So a student's score will be dependent on how many of the topics they've actually mastered. So Tony here, he started his, he's about a quarter of the way through of the entire assignment. So this isn't an accuracy, this is how much completion of the assignment the student has made. So hopefully that helps give you a little bit of information here when you're looking at targeted practice, when you're looking at the results and how to support those students who are stuck or who need a little bit of extra help. Okay. So creating a unit, we did the pretest, we used targeted practice assignments. The last thing we want to do is actually assess growth. We want to talk about quizzes and follow-up assignments. So we're going to jump back in here. And we're going to go to my assignments one more time. So Here at the top of the page, I'm clicking into assignments because that's going to show me all of the assignments I've created that are in progress, upcoming, or even past due. And I'm going to actually unarchive this one so we can take a look. Now, in this, in order to create a quiz after your practice, you're going to click Continue Unit. Just like we did with the practice, we're going to click Quick Growth Quiz. Now, what this is going to do is create the same quiz that we had before. We're going to put a start date, due date, and the assignment name, and click Assign. Now, the important thing that I want to call out about the growth quiz is when you do this, the students' results. So let's click into this results again, that little graph tab. These are my students who've already created this and done this assignment. You'll see here, growth quizzes allow you to compare from one to the next. So my pretest, my growth quiz, and if I scroll down, only Natasha got to this quiz so far, but you can see that she has grown 28 points through. So if I want to see how she did on individual topics, I can filter. She improved significantly on comparative adjectives. She improved significantly on superlative adjectives. So 85% growth there. This is just one of the ways to use a follow-up assignment. A targeted growth quiz is a great way to show growth. We know that that is kind of a buzzword. People want to see that students are learning and they want to see examples of that. These growth quizzes from a unit diagnostic, practice, and growth quiz is a great way to show that. The other thing that I'd like to point out as a follow-up assignment, I'm going to go back to my curriculum library, and I'm just checking the time. Okay, we'll take about 2 minutes. In this curriculum library, when we were on that grammar tab, one of the things you might have seen, in addition to quizzes, are passage quizzes. Now, these are actually available for you to use for free through the rest of the school year. And you can take a look at those. You can preview them by clicking Assign. But I want to point these out because these are really great context-based practice for students. Each one, for example, adjectives, we have a few topics that are covered in these passages. This one's about SpongeBob, which we know is probably pretty engaging to our students. You can preview the essay and how it will look for your students, and they will go through the writing to actually adjust with their tutorial and actually adjust throughout the actual essay through the passage. So it's just a great way to combine writing and reading for your students. It's a real world context of how they would use these grammar rules, and it's a great follow-up. So again, that is the passage quizzes in our grammar tab in the curriculum library, and that's just in addition to growth quizzes. All right, man, this went by really, really quickly, and I feel like we had to speed up. So we talked about pretest with unit diagnostic, using targeted practice, and assessing growth with follow-up quizzes. I know we have a couple questions out here. So I'm going to run through our key takeaways, and then we'll take a few moments. In this 30 minutes, we covered a lot. How to sort content in the curriculum library with standards-based filters. So first, find out where this information is. 2, assign different activities, building a cohesive unit of study. Unit diagnostic, practice, growth quiz. Show that growth, show that mastery that your students are doing from anywhere. And that's how you know it's effective learning. And lastly, differentiating for students, using the assignment results, targeted follow-up practice, targeted follow-up quizzes, targeted follow-up passage quizzes too, to help your students, as well as getting those students unstuck. All right. Oh, goodness. So we do have a lot of questions out here. We definitely want to address those. As we go through the questions, I see some that Christina is sharing with me. Looks like our first question. So we have just a few minutes. We'll answer questions for a bit. First question people are asking, okay, for premium, for those of you who are interested in premium, it sounds like there are some of you who are interested about the locked premium topics, how to get full access. That is a great question. So I'm going to show you where to go when you log into your NoRedInk account. If you want to learn more about premium, you will see on any page on NoRedInk, you'll see this Go Premium tab. Now, one thing I want to share with you guys as you're here is that right now we support premium for school adoptions, but our sales team, our partnerships team is working with administrators to make sure that teachers are getting the access that they need this year and next year. So if you think that your admin, your department, your grade level, any of your other teachers might be interested in using NoRedInk Premium, go ahead and request a contact with our team. One, they are partnerships. We want to make sure that you guys have the access that you need. And two, we do have an offer. I don't want to call it an offer. We are trying to support teachers as much as we can now. So if your school does decide that NoRedInk Premium is something that you'd like to pursue, we'll make it available to you right now as soon as possible. So our partnerships team can work with you, can work with your administrators or your curriculum team to see if it's a good fit for you and if it's going to be beneficial. So clicking on that Go Premium link right here will take you to all of the information you need. That is a great question. We'll also send out in the survey if you want more information. We can always send it to you as well. It is time. So I know some of you probably have to run, so feel free to jump out. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Meanwhile, we're going to try to get to a few more of these questions because we know we covered a lot. Does the assignment go away after the due date? What about late work? That's a great question. No, your assignments will actually stay in your assignment library. So when you view all of your assignments, any assignment that is open for students to be working on, the due date has not passed yet, will be here under in progress. And then any assignments that have been past due will show up down here. So you'll notice that anything that has passed its due date will be here. If you create assignments ahead of time, it'll be here. And if it's currently open to students, it'll be in progress. If the student does the assignment late, will they find the assignment in its normal place? That's a great question. Yes, in a way. So if a student's assignment is past due, I'm gonna click into my NoRedInk main page. This is the main dashboard. If you ever like to see what NoRedInk looks like for your students, down here on the side, you'll see View NoRedInk as a student. If you click here, you can actually see what it looks like for your students in your class. So you'll see all of the assignments. You can preview these assignments from here. And you'll notice that if I scroll down as a student, I'll see all my late assignments that are still available for me to work on are just highlighted in a different color. So that is there for the student. They just need to scroll down. And one thing to note is that on your end in the gradebook, you will see a small clock that looks like this next to a student's assignment who was submitted late. And we can always share more information about that in our Help Center, or if you have any questions about how to see what students have done or when they've submitted it late, feel free to reach back out. Okay, that does take us to time again. So we do hope you guys will join us next week. We are going to talk all about writing assignments, how to use them in remote work. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, please, please feel free to send us your questions to support@noredinc.com and have a lovely afternoon. We'll see you all next week. Thank you.